I don't like pens with caps because I'm always losing the cap. And even if I'm not always losing the cap, if one hand is tied up, it's almost impossible to put the cap back on one-handed. I would assume that's why the clicky pen was invented, but they have a problem too. You get a tiny bit of sawdust in the clicker and the clicky bit quits clicking. But I have a bigger problem with them. See, I carry my pen in my jeans pocket, but every time I lean across the table for something, it does exactly the same thing as my iPhone. So I decided to fix that problem for myself. It's a bolt action, so very reliable, that doesn't get clogged up with sawdust. This is solid 304 stainless steel. It's extremely strong. A nice deep carry pocket clip. Plenty strong to hold it on my jeans. Textured grip. And this is actually dual purpose because it also hides the seam where the two parts come together. The bolt has some little rings cut into it to help give it more friction against your finger. And you'll also notice the piston inside has rings cut around it to match the grip. That's so satisfying. The pen measures 0.335 inch diameter, 5 inches long, and it weighs just over an ounce, or about 30 grams. On most of my projects, I get some comments saying that, wow, you made that look easy. It must have been a lot harder in real life. And generally it's not. The project is really that easy. But this is an exception. This thing was a pain. I did a lot of stuff off camera. Stuff that really wouldn't have added value to the video, it would have just added length. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. I'm starting out with 1/2 inch 304 stainless round. This is a size A drill bit, and I need to drill to 3 inches deep. Now I can enlarge that with an I drill. That's the appropriate size for a 5/16 24 cap. And now I'll enlarge that yet another time with a 5/16 bit. Now I just need to tap that to at least a 1/2 inch deep. And this is a spiral point tap, so I don't need to back it out to clear chips, if you're wondering. Now I need to finish the hole all the way through with a number 3 drill. Rough turn this down to 0.4 inch. So I got half of it turned down to 0.4. Now I'm going to flip that around, grip it by this part, and turn this down to 0.4. I need to face it off so that I can support it with the live center. Okay, that is the perfect length. It looks really rough right now, but I'll turn that down later and get it nice and shiny. Right now I just need to tap this end hole 1/4-28. And that's far enough. Now comes the trickiest, sketchiest part of the entire pen build. I've got to cut the little L-shaped slot in here for the bolt. This would be easy with a mill, but I don't have one, so I'm going to use the lathe. It doesn't take much equipment. You just need an 1/8 inch end mill. I'll hold that in the chuck. This is just a piece of 1/2 inch square bar with a 1/4 inch hole in it. That goes in the tool holder. And then I'm going to use this 1/4-28 bolt to thread into the bottom of here to hold that onto the jig. Be sure it's vertically centered. That looks good. And then in this direction, we need to be 0.765 from the end. This is going to be almost impossible to film. Okay, that ought to work. Yep, it's just as sketchy and tricky as I expected, especially considering there's multiple cameras in my way. Yep, that's through. Alright, that looks good. Now I need to cut the locking portion of the slot, which is done by putting this on this side, and this has to be flipped straight down. This is optional, but I'm gonna turn this to an angle about... That's gonna change how long the locking portion of the slot is. This will be far enough, and I like how it looks better. I need to get the bottom of the end mill lined up with the bottom of the slot. If I just keep cutting, I'm going to make that corner square, and I don't want that. So I have to start making a compound 30-degree movement by turning the cranks at the right speed. Here we go. I think I'm done. This part is done for now, so I'll set that aside, aka in my pocket, and start working on my nose. And now I'll continue that hole to a depth of 1.78 using a 3/16 inch bit. And now I'll continue drilling that all the way through with a number 36 bit. There we go. So the drilling is all done. Now I just need to rough turn this to 0.4. This end is going to get threaded, so I need to turn that down to 5/16. I prefer to just use a die to make the threads. It's a lot quicker than using the threading attachment on the lathe. And there's where the die hits the shoulder, so that's as far as I can go. Nice clean thread. And now I can flip that around, shape the point of my nose. This facing cut will establish the part's overall length of 2 inches. Now I'm going to turn the compound 17.5 degrees. That's the angle I want the point to be. The nose and the barrel are both done, except for turning down the outside diameter, which I'm going to do all at once on the whole thing so they line up. And I also need to do that with the clip screw. But I want to make the clip before I make the screw, so I'm going to make the clip out of this 18-inch ruler. It seems like kind of a waste of a ruler, but I think these are only about $3. It's the perfect material because it's stainless and very springy. I'm going to drill the hole as early as possible to keep the bit from twisting up the metal. So there's a rough, oversized outline of the clip. All that's really important here is that this end is ground to match the end profile of the pen, and other than that, it just needs to be symmetrical down the center. That'll allow me to rotate that against the disc sander. I can line up the mark on both sides to make sure that I'm getting both sides nice and straight. Okay, now that is the same diameter as the finished pen will be, so that end is done. Now I just need to finish profiling this. Well, I think that's done. I like the curve on the end and very simple. This is just some very fine sandpaper. That gets rid of all the little burn marks and the tooling marks. Now I just need to bend that into a clip shape. That makes me a little nervous because I've got a lot of work into this, but if I mess it up, so what? That was not perfect. I'll try pinching it in a vise. Need to put a little bend right here to allow it to slide onto a pocket. So now the clip is done and I'm going to make the clip screw. I'm starting this with a button head cap screw, and you could very well make this yourself, but I wanted the hex head and I thought this would be the easiest way to get that. This is a 3/4 inch length because I originally had a little different idea here, but I'm just going to turn this into a 1/4 inch, and then we need to do just a little bit of work on the head. Now I'll just chuck up the barrel and I'll use that to hold this screw. So all I'm trying to do is turn a nice 45-degree chamfer onto this screw. I'm also going to face off the end of the screw just to make it look more like I made it. Now we're finally ready to turn the entire outside diameter of the pen down to 3/8, or maybe a little under. I have a piece of that same material as I made the clip out of under that clip screw, and that's pretty important to keep everything spaced correctly. Just in case there is something not concentric, that's going to make sure that everything turns out right when the clip is in place. So now the only other thing I need in order to turn this down is this little jig. This is just a piece of 1/2 inch round, and it has a 45-degree cup in this end. That works as a friction chuck with that 45-degree chamfer on the screw. So that's why that 45-degree chamfer is important. So that jig just goes in the chuck, then the pen gets jammed in there, and the live center right into the point. That took a long time, but at least all I had to do was stand here and think about my deep appreciation for the guy who invented power feed. Anyways, now I'm going to make the grip, and if you look real close, you cannot see where the break between the two parts is. But I'm going to make that even more disguised by incorporating it into part of the grip. So I've identified where the break is, and you can see it right there. Installed this very pointy threading cutter, and I'm going to line that up with that seam, and now I'll just make a series of cuts every 50 thousandths all the way to this end. I'm just using my compound set at 90 degrees to give me those 50 thousandths increments. The body of the pen is now completely done, so the next part is just to make the piston and the bolt, and the pen will be complete. Alright, now I'll take that over to the drill press and through drill for the bolt. Here's a little tip for when you're trying to line up a center punched hole. If your drill press has a light, you can use the reflection of that light to make sure you're lined up. Now I can go ahead and take this down to its final diameter. I'm going to mimic the look of the grip onto this part. On the finished pen it will be very subtle, but I think it'll look really cool. Now I need to through drill that part before I part it off. I'll just use a hacksaw to part this off real quick. Now I'm going to tap that for a set screw that'll hold the bolt in. And again, I feel I should mention this is a spiral point tap, so that's why I'm not backing out clear chips. Now we're ready to start on the bolt. Alright, that's the proper outside diameter. So now I'll just park this off, flip it around, and create the profile for the top of the bolt. Whoa, I almost lost that. That is the back edge of the table. And here's where it went. Ouch! Now I'm going to cut 3 little steps into this. That gives a little better grip so you can actuate it more easily, and it also makes it look cool. Alright, let's do some assembly. So this is just a standard run-of-the-mill hardware store set screw, a 1/4 inch long, and it is stainless. Now I'll thread that into the end of the piston, and now I can put the piston in the barrel. I can use the Allen wrench to turn that till I expose the hole right here, and then just take the bolt and drop that right into that hole, just like that. Now I don't want to push the bolt all the way in, or it will interfere with the track when I'm trying to slide it. So I want to leave it out by about the thickness of a fingernail. Then I can tighten the set screw. Check to be sure the bolt works properly. It seems to work great. For the ink, I designed it to use a Parker refill. These have a fairly large capacity, which is nice, but for my own use, I think a Fisher Space Pen refill is better. Fisher Space Pen refills work in Parker pens, so they also work in this pen. And for a spring, I just stole that out of this Wasted Zebra, so that can go on there. And then I can just thread on the cap, or the point, or the nose, or whatever you want to call it. And it is done.